Coming live from the studio, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for watching another episode of All Sports. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I am going to talk about the coronavirus, Major League Baseball, and NBA basketball. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great week. To start off with the coronavirus, the return of sports, we have started to see the return of sports here in the U.S. and in other countries around the world. Here in the U.S., we have seen NASCAR, UFC, and now PGA Golf return as of this month. Hopefully this summer, we will see other sporting events and leagues resume or start their season. Later on this year, we should also see more sporting events and other leagues start their season. So there were some sporting events like the Kentucky Derby that were supposed to take place last month. And there was many other events that were supposed to take place since March. Now an event like the Kentucky Derby and some other events got scheduled for later this year. Also, many other events got postponed and rescheduled for next year. So the events that are supposed to happen later on this year, like the Kentucky Derby, hopefully they happen and we can see those events happen and take place, since they were not able to happen in the last few months. But there is a chance they can happen in the next few months. Also, some events that had to get postponed, we're just going to have to wait and see if those events can happen. And most of those events got postponed until next year. So in 2021, there is going to be a lot of events that are going to take place, since they couldn't take place in 2020 due to the schedule, or just because they couldn't get rescheduled, or with the fear of the coronavirus taking place again later on this year. We're also hoping that we can see more sporting events happen here in the U.S. and in other countries around the world. We also want to see the return of leagues happen here in the U.S., since we've seen this take place in other countries around the world. And hopefully, with the return of leagues, regardless of where it is, they can either start or resume their season in the next few months or later on this year. Also, another question that's up in the air, the leagues that are currently in their off season and they begin their season later on this year, are they going to be able to start their season on time and have a season just like any other season? We're going to have to wait and see. But there's no doubt, no matter what sporting event or league it is, no matter if it's here in the U.S. or in other parts of the world, their season, if they can have a season in 2020, is going to be completely different compared to seasons from the past. And even in 2021, their season could possibly be different. So we're just going to have to wait and see if other leagues and sporting events can happen in 2020, and how are they going to be played? How is the season going to be formatted? Also, is there going to be a difference in 2021 with that league or sporting event? We're just going to have to wait and see. But there's no doubt that no matter what league or sporting event it is, no matter if it plays in 2020 or even in 2021, the way that it's going to have to be played, and even the format of it, is going to be completely different. And there's no doubt that for that league or sporting event, it's definitely going to make history in that league or sporting event, and even in the sports world, because of how that season had to be played due to the coronavirus pandemic. There's no doubt that there's going to be books written about 2020, but also about the coronavirus and how it affected the sports world. And there's definitely going to be a lot of history about how this coronavirus affected the sports world, and future generations are definitely going to be reading about 2020 and about the coronavirus. But with the return of sports taking place around the world, no matter what league or sporting event it is, it's just great to see sports returning back. But also, we want to see more sports return back. And hopefully, in 2021, or even in 2022, we can see the sports world return back to normal and function the way it always has up until 2020 because of the coronavirus pandemic. But it would just be great to see sports return back, no matter what league or sporting event it is, that's able to start or resume their season here in the US or in any other country around the world. Everyone just wants to see sports return back. Now, if we take a look at the 4 major leagues here in the US, there's no doubt, no matter if they had to stop their season or even if they're in their off season, the coronavirus has affected all the major leagues here in the US. And the coronavirus has affected many leagues and sporting events here in the US and around the world. But if we take a look at the 4 major leagues here in the US, which includes the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, and the NHL, the coronavirus has affected these leagues in different ways, regardless if they were currently in the season or they're in their off season. But if we take a look at Major League Baseball, as of right now, there's still negotiations and talks about a 2020 season, and up until now, another proposal and different proposals have been thrown on the table, but both sides haven't agreed to a proposal to have a 2020 season. In the last show, I said that Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred stated that he's 100% sure that there will be a 2020 season. But in the last week, Robert Manfred has changed his statement, saying that he's not sure and certain, and he can't guarantee that there will be a 2020 season because of this situation. So we're going to have to wait and see, regardless of what statement Rob Manfred has made, if he lives up to his words. But with the situation that's taking place in Major League Baseball right now, it's still a 50-50 chance that there will be a 2020 season. And we're just going to have to wait and see if sometime in the next few weeks, if both sides can agree to a proposal that has been thrown on the table. But as of right now, different proposals have been thrown on the table, and almost on a daily basis, but especially on a weekly basis, you see more proposals, and they all change. But if there is a 2020 season, I will definitely update you about that. We're just going to have to wait and see if there is a 2020 season. But now that we're in June, the clock is ticking, and the longer they wait, the higher the chance is that there will not be a 2020 season, because Major League Baseball has already said that they will not play into late fall and especially the winter. Now, if we take a look at the NBA has thrown a proposal on the table, and they have also approved that proposal to resume the season and play out the 2019-2020 season in Orlando. And if the NBA and Major League Soccer is able to play their current season, Orlando's going to be the place to be to watch these two leagues resume their season. But with everything that's been taking place in the last few weeks, there has been NBA players speaking out about not wanting to resume the season and go down to Orlando because of everything that's going on right now. But also, the main reason is because of the coronavirus pandemic. And these individuals are worried about the coronavirus situation. And by being down in Orlando, they would have to be isolated from the outside world for a couple weeks and even for a few months, depending on how far their team would advance into the playoffs. That would determine how long that team would be down in Orlando. So because of the situation with the coronavirus and everything else that's taking place right now, we're just going to have to wait and see if the NBA does resume their season later on this summer at the end of July down in Orlando. But there are individual players speaking out about not wanting to resume the season or play the season down in Orlando because of the fear of the coronavirus, but also because of everything else that is taking place right now. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with the NBA and if they can play out the 2019-2020 season. With the NHL, they have thrown a proposal, and it has gotten approved, to resume the 2019-2020 season. As of right now, there has been a few cities that are the possible cities where the 2019-2020 season will resume. And as of right now, the NHL is going through the process of which cities will be the host cities for all the NHL teams that are going to play and resume the 2019-2020 season. And we're just going to have to wait and see what cities will host these NHL teams and what cities it will be when the NHL makes the official statement as to what cities will be the host cities for the NHL season when the NHL season resumes later this summer. Also, with the NHL, they have the plan to resume the 2019-2020 season later on this summer, and they have the proposal which was approved of how the season would be played out and what would be the format of the season. And as of right now, for the last few weeks, as the NHL is approaching the time period to resume the 2019-2020 season, the NHL is opening up in phases with Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and Phase 4. Each phase is a closer step for the NHL to resume their current season and to play out the rest of the 2019-2020 season. As of right now, the NHL is at Phase 2. Phase 1 was opening the team facilities and having voluntary workouts. Phase 2 is the NHL teams getting together at their team facility or arena and working out as a team. Phase 3, which is expected to start on July 10th, will be training camp beginning for all NHL teams, and all the teams will be together at their team facility or arena, beginning with training camp and preparing to resume the 2019-2020 season. And Phase 4 will be when the 2019-2020 season resumes. So the NHL is opening up in phases, and as we get into the next few weeks, the next phases will open, and when we get to a certain phase, that is when the NHL season will resume, which will be later on this summer. So we're just going to have to wait and see if the NHL follows their proposal and their schedule for the format of how they want the rest of the 2019-2020 season to play, and if they follow that format for that season to resume so they can finish the 2019-2020 season. So that is the current status for the 4 major sports leagues here in the US, and hopefully in the next few weeks we will see leagues here in the US start or resume their season. But no matter what league it is, regardless if it's here in the US or in other parts of the world, we just want to see leagues be able to start or resume their season. And no matter what league or sporting event it is, anywhere around the world, everyone just wants to see sports return back, no matter what league or sporting event it is, here in the US or around the world. Moving on now to Major League Baseball. The 2020 Major League Baseball Draft was from June 10th through the 11th. This year's draft only had 5 rounds, from the first round through the 5th round. So if we take a look at the 2020 Major League Baseball Draft, there's no doubt that this draft was different from all drafts from the past, especially because the 2020 Major League Baseball Draft only had 5 rounds. Luckily for Major League Baseball, it was just great to see that Major League Baseball had a 2020 draft and that they were able to pull it off, even though there was only 5 rounds and not that many players had the opportunity to get drafted. And there's no doubt that this year's draft was different compared to drafts from the past, especially because a Major League Baseball draft has a lot of rounds and a lot of players get drafted. And in the 2020 draft, that wasn't the case. And unfortunately, a lot of players didn't get drafted this year. And a lot of players are going to have to wait until the 2021 draft to have the opportunity to get drafted. Major League Baseball is just happy that they were able to pull off a 2020 draft, and they're hoping that in 2021 and going forward, that their draft can return back to the format that it's always been up until 2020, and they're hoping that more players can get drafted, but also they can have all their rounds like they always have. And there's no doubt that this year's draft was different, and Major League Baseball is hoping that they can return back to normal, especially with their draft in 2021. The Tigers had the first pick in the 2020 Major League Baseball Draft, and they selected third baseman Spencer Torkelson. In the 2020 Major League Baseball Draft, this is who the Rockies drafted in this year's draft. With the 9th pick, they selected outfielder Zach Veen. With the 35th pick, they selected catcher Drew Romo. With the 46th pick, they selected right-handed pitcher Chris McMahon. With the 81st pick, they selected left-handed pitcher Sam Wetterly. With the 110th pick, they selected right-handed pitcher Case Williams. And with the 140th pick, they selected infielder Jake Bullinger. So that is who the Rockies drafted in the 2020 Major League Baseball Draft. And the Rockies are hoping with the individual players that they selected in this year's draft that they can make the Rockies roster sometime in the future and also make an impact for the Rockies going into the future. But in this year's draft, the Rockies focused on positions that they needed, and they were able to draft players for positions they possibly need an individual player for their roster going into the future. And the Rockies are hoping that these individual players that they drafted will sometime make their team going into the future and get called up to be on the Rockies roster. But in this year's draft, the Rockies focused on positions they needed, and they're hoping that these players can make an impact on their team going into the future. And in this year's draft, the Rockies drafted players that they needed, especially pitchers that they need going into the future. And the Rockies are hoping that they got prospects that will make their team and make an impact on their team, regardless of what position it is going into the future. But the Rockies are hoping that the pitchers they drafted will make an impact on their team going into the future, either as a starting pitcher or a reliever in the bullpen. Moving on now to NBA basketball. After playing 22 seasons in the NBA, Vince Carter's career came to an end with the Hawks on March 11 after the Hawks-Knicks game when the 2019-2020 season was suspended due to the coronavirus. In Vince Carter's 22-year career in the NBA, playing for the Raptors, Nets, Magic, Suns, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Kings, and Hawks, he is the only player in NBA history to play in 4 different decades. He played in the 3rd most games played in NBA history. He was the first 40-year-old player to hit 3+ three-pointers in a playoff game. He holds the NBA playoff record for three-pointers made in a half. He is one of 6 players in NBA history to average 20+ points per game, 4+ rebounds per game, and 3+ assists per game in 10 straight seasons. He won Rookie of the Year in 1999. He is one of 2 players to win the NBA Slam Dunk Contest and an Olympic gold medal in the same year in 2000. He is the Raptors franchise leader in career points per game, and he was the first New Jersey Nets player to score 2,000+ points in a single season. There's no doubt that Vince Carter was one of the best players to ever play in the NBA. And there's no doubt that going into the future, Vince Carter will find himself in the NBA Hall of Fame. I would not be surprised if Vince Carter makes it into the NBA Hall of Fame in the future with the type of career that Vince Carter had in the NBA. Vince Carter is always going to be remembered as being one of the best players to ever play in the NBA. But he's going to be remembered for all the records that he broke while playing a 22-year career in the NBA, especially because Vince Carter is the only player in NBA history to play 22 seasons in the NBA, which is the most seasons played in NBA history. The most seasons that has been played in NBA history has been 21 seasons, which 4 players have done in their NBA career, but no one has played more than 21 seasons in the NBA, except for Vince Carter. And Vince Carter is the only player that has played the most seasons in NBA history, which was 22 seasons. But there's no doubt that Vince Carter will be remembered for all the records he broke during his NBA career, especially at the beginning of his career and towards the end of his career, because of how long he played in the NBA. Vince Carter will also be remembered for playing in the NBA for all the teams he played for in the NBA, especially for the teams he played for towards the beginning of his career, especially when he played for the Raptors and the Nets. But Vince Carter will be remembered for all the teams he played for, regardless if it's the Raptors, the Nets, the Magic, the Suns, the Mavericks, the Grizzlies, the Kings, or the Hawks. Vince Carter made an impact for all the teams he played for during his NBA career. And there's no doubt that Vince Carter will be missed, but Vince Carter will definitely be remembered for the type of career he had in the NBA and for the impact he made for each team that he played for. Unfortunately for Vince Carter, he probably did not have it planned out for how his NBA career would end and how it would come to an end because of the coronavirus pandemic and how it affected the sports world and the NBA. It's unfortunate the way Vince Carter's career came to an end. And unfortunately, we will not see Vince Carter play in the NBA again because of how the NBA season had to come to an end because of the coronavirus pandemic. And with the proposal that the NBA put on the table for how they will resume the 2019-2020 season and how this season will play out, Vince Carter's career has come to an end because all the teams that were not contending for a playoff spot in the Eastern or Western Conference, their season has come to an end, and they will have to wait to play until next season when the 2020-2021 season begins. Since Vince Carter played for the Hawks, the Hawks season has come to an end since they are not contending for a playoff spot, and Vince Carter's career has come to an end since the Hawks will not be playing when the 2019-2020 season resumes. So it's unfortunate of how Vince Carter's career has come to an end, but Vince Carter will always be remembered in the NBA for the type of career that he had in the NBA, but especially because he played 22 seasons in the NBA and for all the records he broke while he played in the NBA for 22 seasons. There's no doubt that the NBA will miss Vince Carter, but the NBA will always remember Vince Carter for the impact he made in the NBA while he played in the NBA for 22 seasons, and there's no doubt that going into the future, Vince Carter will be an NBA Hall of Famer for the type of career that he had in the NBA. Moving on now to end the show, what to watch for? The return of sports here in the US and around the world. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about the coronavirus, NFL football, NHL hockey, college football, and boxing. I hope you all have a great week. Tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next week. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.